Attention, bobsled ride.
Yodelers! You gotta come back with me!
Where?
Back to the past!
What are you doing?
I need Dole Whips! Go ahead, quick! Get in the bobsled!
No, we have a great podcast for our yodelers today.
We'll bring them along too! They'll enjoy this as well!
Wait, what are you talking about? Did something happen to us in the past? Is something wrong with the Matterhorn?
No! The Matterhorn is just fine! It's the company, Yodelers! You have to see what happened to the company!
You better watch out. We don't have enough track to hit 88.
Tracks? Where we're going, we don't need tracks.
Hello, Yodelers! Welcome back. We are the Matterhorn Yodelers. I am your host today, Peter, with my co-host,
Jackie
and
Japheth.
And today we are going back to the past. We're each gonna go back in time to the history of the Walt Disney Company and talk about some points that we think we would like to witness, learn about, and just experience in general, just to see what it was like back then.
Yeah, what's the true story, or to get a feel of the people and the energy in that time period?
Correct, because like in a lot of situations where, especially when we're dealing with this time period, there can be a lot of conflicting information about where this one thing started or where that one thing started, or ideas or histories have been lost. And so it's good to go back to see things as they happened, as they really happened. And so we're each going to go, we've each picked out a time period, different time period. We did our homework beforehand. We're not like, hey, you took mine!
So we're all three going to be at the Disneyland opening.
No. So we all picked different times, and I'm going to start because I'm taking this all the way back to the 1930s.
Ooh.
1930s for the next 8 years. I'm going to observe 8 years worth of history.
There's a period too, like where I'm going to go back to.
So during this time period, as I said, I'm starting off. This 1930s was basically the heyday for Walt Disney Animation when they were just doing shorts. This was peak. Walt Disney had already become a household name. People knew who he was. So he was already famous. He wasn't just some producer or animator. Well, he didn't really do much animating, but he was more. And around this time period, they were in the studio, the Hyperion Studio, which was the studio before where they're at right now in Burbank. So this one was in L.A. I actually have the address at 2701 Hyperion Avenue in Los Angeles,
Does
California.
it still exist?
It does not, which is one of the reasons why I want to go back to this time period so I could walk the halls of the Hyperion.
Save the Hyperion! Save the Hyperion! Here, lady, here's a quarter.
So, yeah, just to see this old, the old studio that Walt and Roy bought and built just a few blocks down the road from their house, and to see how they had everything set up, because as I said, the studio is no longer there. If you go to that address now, it's a Gleason's Market. It's a grocery store. Yes, but there is a plaque on one of the poles that says this is a historical site of the original site of Walt Disney's first animated studio. in California. So there is a little plaque there. I think it's very faded from the sun. They haven't replaced it in a while. You really have to know it's there in order for you to see it. So it's, yeah. But it would be really cool to go back in time to see that lot and to see the building, to see how Walt designed it.
Because that's what they did Snow White.
That's where they did all of their animation beforehand, as well as where they made Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And there's still a lot of mystery as to the layout of the building too, because some people, they all the documentaries and things that I've read, they say, we think Walt's office was behind this window. Like, they still don't even, like, can pinpoint based off of the pictures where Walt's office was.
It's kind of tough when, you know, you don't have the layout and yeah, it's been over 100 years, really.
Absolutely.
Or under 100 years.
So we have Walt Disney and his animation crew. In the 1930s, they're doing really well. They're very successful at making their Mickey Mouse cartoons as well as their silly symphonies. It's around this time that Walt Disney, and this is one of the reasons why I want to go back, because there's a lot of conflicting stories as to when Walt wanted to start working on full-length animation. Some say that Walt had made a trip over to Europe, and over there they compiled like an hour's worth of Mickey shorts into like a little Mickey movie that people were watching. He goes, hey, there's a demand for full-length animation. And others would say that, you know, and others said that the company, and I think this is true, I think this was a driving force as to why they made Snow White, that they weren't making as much money on their shorts. And the cost of making the shorts kept going up, so the only way for them to be successful and to survive is if they were to transition into full-length animation. So there's a couple different factors as to like what sparked the idea. As to why they picked Snow White, it's said that, you know, Walt grew up watching this old Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs movie, black and white, silent movie back in that time, and that stuck in his mind as something that he's always wanted to make into some sort of animation project. So, and for a while, he kind of kept things kind of secret. There was a lot of speculation.
There's competition in this small town.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of speculation, little news reports saying, is Walt Disney going to work on a movie, an animated movie? Even the animators were like, didn't even know if this was a thing or was going to be a thing, till eventually they started getting the idea when they started seeing Walt hire a lot more animators on the scene and for, you know, more finite details and things like that. And so eventually Walt announced to everyone, says, we're working on the Snow White project. And
where he at least has a head start before anybody can.
Yeah.
You got to get the talent, and so yeah, it's very strategic.
And so when Walt made the announcement, everyone told him this was the worst idea in the world. Says, Walt, you will ruin your company. His co-workers, his brother, which was
So Roy Disney,
so the person who's helping him run his company, his wife didn't even believe in the project. Everyone poo-pooed it. Even, obviously, the media came in and poo-pooed it even more. They kept calling it Disney's Folly, and it hadn't even come out yet. This was years before it even come out.
What a great way to start a new project.
So, like, you could tell there's a lot of enthusiasm. But what got this going, and it was another reason why I want to go back, I want to see this, was when Walt, he already had the movie laid out.
So he had the storyboard.
He had the story before he even, like, was, you know, before he met with everyone. So, like, he met with everyone and literally pitched the entire movie, acted out every scene. There's no video footage of this, but they say that like it was one of the most spectacular things to see Walt Disney act out every part of the movie. Acted out the evil witch, acted out the dwarves, and even Snow White, and like he literally performed the movie and sold the movie to his animators. To the point where like they were getting excited. That was one thing Walt was really good at. He was a salesman.
Yes.
He knows how to sell something. And so obviously when they got into the production of it, when it came to coming up with ideas, he wanted everyone's input. You know, he thought it was important that everyone be a part of this project, so it wasn't just Walt's project, it was everyone's project. So he even gave out little bonus incentives. It says, if you come up with a gag and we use it, we'll pay you for it. And so, like, I want to be in the meeting where they're pitching all these gags.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That would be great.
With all the drawers.
Yeah.
I mean, I just watched it today with my little girl because she was pointing at all the Snow White stuff at my parents' place. And I was like, oh, let me just show it to her. And she just sat there and watched it. And I was like, oh, I like the little funny things like the turtle trying to get up the stairs with his mouth, and now I'm thinking somebody's all like, I got paid for that.
So like, yeah, they got these little, so like just to sit there and like hear these pitches, like that would be one of the most fun things to sit in and watch, are these pitches. Another part that I want to go back and see is a lot of people have heard, who know a little bit about Disney history, have heard about the 9 old men. Well, a lot of those 9 old men were, you can call them the 9 young men. They weren't the head honchos here. I think they said out of the 9, there was only one person that was given a big responsibility, and that was Frank Wells, and he was in charge of the Snow White funeral scene, which was actually a very important scene of the movie. But everyone else was, you know, doing generic stuff. You had people, Fred Moore, Norm Ferguson, Grim Natwick. Grim Natwick, he actually is the creator of Betty Boop, and he was put in charge of making Snow White.
Wow.
Yes, so like he was definitely picked specifically for that job. Ham Lusk, he also worked on Snow White. Art Babbitt, he was the creator of Goofy as well. He worked on the Evil Queen. So like to see these people who actually taught the famous 9 old men would be an incredible thing. To see the people that we have always seen as the masters being taught is kind of cool.
The OGs.
Yeah, the OGs.
But every OG needs a mentor or an inspiration.
So, yeah, that was one of the things. Like, it would be cool just to see that aspect of that. They also talked about how Walt Disney encouraged people to go check out the other departments, to go see what they're doing. He encouraged each department to talk to each other and say, hey, I think it would be better if you switch to the arms moving like this, because it looks like it was a big community. It was like a family. To the point where like even Walt would be like, all right, we're all going to go across the street to the empty lot and we're going to go play baseball. And he
I saw that video recently, yeah.
He's just going to go play baseball with his animators just to, you know, it was definitely a family atmosphere at that time period. You know, like Walt Disney, he wasn't, I mean, at least at that time, he wasn't that boss that was all like, you have to hit that deadline, like you have to stay at your desk the entire time until your job is done. He was a person who's like, if you get your job done, that's all that I care about. Like, if you wander around or whatever, like, that's fine. But as long as you get your work done, like, I don't care.
He's got other things to do besides micromanage.
Yeah, and I think Walt appreciated quality of the work compared to getting it done and the timeline of it.
So, and the one thing that's always amazed me, and because a lot of people nowadays kind of poo-poo on Snow White because, oh, it doesn't look as good, Snow White's voice is annoying, but if you take that piece as it is from that time period and look at what other animation looks like, even the Disney Studios animation, the shorts and things like that look like, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a masterpiece of art. Like you just looking at the backgrounds is amazing. The fine detail, like you did not see that ever.
It was the Star Wars of its time.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Actually, a funny side story. So when Snow White came out, the people who later came out with Wizard of Oz said, "Oh, there's a market for this," and so Snow White indirectly caused the creation of the Wizard of Oz, the movie, the classic movie.
Oh.
So there's
That's
a
cool.
connection, which in turn helped inspire Star Wars. So 7 degrees, right? No.
George Lucas and Walt Disney are the same, right?
Well, that could be a debate for another time. So another aspect that I want to see, and I think I've talked about this before, is this meeting. The company's out of money. They're not close to being done. The banks are not very forthcoming. They don't believe
It's
in
the
project.
depression.
It's the depression,
Yes.
absolutely. And so they're like,
I think there's
they're
a crash in
very
36.
hesitant. And so Roy told Walt, he says, "You need to show the bankers what you've done." And so he invited the bank over. I think it was from Bank of America.
Yeah, Bank of America was their go-to back then.
And so he brought them into to their theater to show what they had, and it was rough. You know, they had some scenes that were completed, others that were just sketches and like not done. But Walt was there explaining everything as it was happening and explained the entire movie to the banker and telling him how exciting it's going to look and be, and see this, it's going to look like this, and back here, like to see that. And the banker was quiet the whole time. He didn't say a word. And then the movie ended. Walt walks him over to his car, and the banker said right before he leaves, and he goes, "You're going to make a lot of movie with that movie." He left.
A lot of money or movie?
He's going to make a lot of money with that movie.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I was like, oh boy, that's interesting.
A lot of money with that movie. And then the next day they got a big check so that they can finish the movie.
That guy pretty much, like,
Saved Disney.
That
Boy.
banker.
boy, that banker really
Yeah, and
is
if you
critical.
can find that banker now.
I'm sure there's some.
If there was a name, we don't know the name of the banker. If we only knew the name, we can thank that guy, because if he said no, we would not have the Disney company today.
No.
Like, that company was, like, they talked about how, you know, Walt had sold the production of this so much to his animators that a lot of them at that time were actually going unpaid, because they believed in the project so much, because Walt didn't have any money to pay them.
And he was the biggest, like, provider of jobs for animators
This
and
is
artists
true.
too. So it's like we've got to create the need for us, and this will be it.
Absolutely. And then that takes us to the premiere. Okay? The premiere at the Carthay Circle Theater, which unfortunately does not exist, but you can see replicas in both California Adventure, it's the big icon at the end of Buena Vista Street, as well as at Hollywood Studios, which is towards the end. It's a gift shop on Sunset Boulevard next to the Theater of the Stars or the Tower of Terror over there. So you can see replicas of that theater, where they premiered Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, where everyone showed up. And again, the media, the press were all poo-pooing this. No one's going to sit through an hour-and-a-half cartoon. No one will. And, you know, what Walt Disney said was, like, the moment he knew it was a success was at the very end, during the Snow White funeral scene, when he could hear people in the audience crying.
Got the emotional.
He
response.
got the emotional response, and he knew he did it at that point. And at that point, the Disney company had established itself as the powerhouse, and if you include the numbers for inflation, it's still considered one of the highest grossing movies of all time.
It produced. I did my own research, and they made like $8 million back then. And just to put in like perspective, the average person lived in 1940 off of like $1,700 a year.
Yeah.
And so to make that type of moolah, whew,
When
in the middle of depression,
movie tickets were like
25
A
yeah,
nickel,
25 cents
yeah.
in 1940. Yeah.
Like they did, and that paved the way for them to build a brand new studio, to bring in new animators, for them to make more movies at a time.
But you're bouncing year after year, new movie.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so the reason why I picked this time period is because in no other time period in the Disney company was Walt's attention focused on one project. After this point, his hands were in a lot of cookie jars.
Yes.
He was all over the place, whether it be on television, working theme parks, working live action, animated. He had his hands in a lot of cookie jars after this point. So this is the one project he so fully dedicated.
This is pure Disney, like Walt Disney.
It really is. Like, and I forgot. There's one part I do want to see because I think it would be cool. I want to see the sound effects studio.
Yeah.
Because like nowadays, we can take that for granted because nowadays it's like it's all digital and it's all I just hit buttons and make random sounds. They actually had to make the different sounds, so like you can see them. Like they invented machines just to make certain noises. Like they talked about the guy who created this like rotating machine that had beads in it and like nails, so to replicate the sound of rain. And like they talked about how like Walt walked up to him and said, "What are you doing?" And it's like, "I'm creating this machine that makes it sound like rain." And he goes, "Tell me when you're done." And so he told
That
him
way I know whether to fire you or to promote you.
Well, that was the thing. And that was the thing. Like he came in, he showed him the machine, and goes, "Oh, okay," and he left. And then the next day, he gets called into Walt's office, and he goes, "I'm giving you $100 raise." And he's all like, "Okay." So like,
Dinner's on me. I just bought a house. No, I just.
Actually, another side note: behind the studio, the Hyperion studio, which is still there today, there are these houses. Which
You're
now
talking about the houses.
The houses behind the studio.
Mm-hmm.
There was houses called. Well, I think the name came afterward, but they're called Snow White cottages, which they're designed. Supposedly, the design of those houses helped inspire the Seven Dwarfs Cottage, which those houses are still there today, and privately owned. So
Probably like a Tudor style, like European home. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So that is what I've experienced as I traveled back in time. But now let's go back to the future. Japheth, where are you taking us?
So I'm gonna probably cross paths with you and cause a rip in the space-time continuum. There's somewhere like that. We'll bump into each other and we'll have that stare of like, what are you doing here? So originally I was curious about World War II. You know, it's a lot of Americans love this time period. You know, we rose up to the challenge, and I was kind of like, what was Walt's challenge? You know, you hear about it, and doing research, I've come upon the strike that the Disney company went through in 1941. And so Peter's gone on this like super high Walt, and I was like, wow, he did such a good job.
Yeah.
And I'm going to discuss the growth from that sudden success. And growth usually means that there's pain and trial that comes with it. And so this strike is part of that growth into this company that we know. And so I think it was just a necessary part of success. And I didn't know I was going to get into that until I started doing research. And the more I was reading into it, I want to be there. I want to see everything unfolding because there's just so much working around him, like inside the company, outside the company, to where I just want to see how the man that we all know as Walt, handle this. And so, like I said, the strike starts in 1941, but to give you context of what's going on, you have Snow White, that the movie released in 1937. And so the strike doesn't happen for another 4 years, but there's a lot that goes on. Germany invades Poland in September 1st, 1939. So 2 years after the success of Snow White, Europe is in war now. And after that, February 1940, Pinocchio is released, and 40%, some say 75% of Walt's market is cut out. And so they're not watching movies, they're fighting wars in Europe. So Walt did not see the success that he should have gotten for Pinocchio. I think he would have made just as much money
Absolutely.
if Europe was there.
People consider Pinocchio Walt Disney's most beautiful film that he's ever made, artistically wise. Like, it was basically
the layering as he's going in with the camera. Oh, love it in the beginning
with the multiplane camera. They used it very well in that movie.
And so, like, you have that, and you're just like, okay. And then the next step is Fantasia, and that was just next level. Like, you think Snow White was next level? He was, like, going to take Fantasia to the next level.
This was definitely, Fantasia was visionary Walt.
Yes.
Again.
So I'm saying this was Golden Age Walt, and it kind of ends with this right here, with that Walt being fully invested in the animation as he is, as Peter was saying. Fantasia didn't find the success. Again, you're missing all of Europe, and he had ambitions about sound system, interactivity with the crowd, and the movie, and just the audience didn't respond the way he envisioned it.
He was ahead of his time.
Way ahead.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. And so with that saying, the company is in trouble, because in this time, Peter says, with the money of Snow White, he buys a plot of land in Burbank and builds a beautiful campus.
Which they still use today.
They still use today, Art Deco, and, with that success, this man came from, like, asking the bank, like, I need some money to finish this, and so he's shoestringing budget, getting everything, and he's like, whoa, we got money. I'm building a campus, we're doing great.
He starts a school.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, an animation school, because he knew in order to go to the next level, he needed to re-educate
he was big
his
into
animators.
that.
And so, like, he sent his animators to school, but at the school they were only teaching about, like, still
And he wanted
art.
movement.
And so he helped start that education process of how to teach about animation and movement and art in that sense. And so, and to this day, like, without Walt Disney's putting that forward, animation would not exist.
Yeah, he had a need, and he was creating a support to fulfill that need.
Yeah.
Since he was so revolutionary with what he was doing. And so with that being there's money crunch. You know, there's you've had two films and you break even in one, and you didn't do so well in Fantasia.
As Walt said in an interview, I actually just watched the other day, he says, Pinocchio and Fantasia were artistic successes, but not financially.
Yeah. And so he's under some pressure at this time. And Pearl Harbor happens in 1941 in December, and this strike takes place right before that happens. And so a little bit more background, in the 1930s, there's a rise of labor unions. As the Depression sets in, those who have money are trying to maintain lifestyle, and so they may squeeze, more out of what they've got. Because people are not going to the movies as much, or, they're trying to keep their businesses going. And so people start to unionize at the time. And so by 1940, Hollywood Screen Cartoonists Guild in 1938 had unionized all the town's major animation studios except for Disney. And so I was reading this today, a big push was that because there were individuals who work for these unions and guilds, they were trying to extort money from these bigwigs. So at the time, there are people trying to use the union threat and organizing a strike against these movie production companies into joining the union so they get union dues and get regular money.
Oh, yeah.
So they were trying to extort money to feed their lifestyle.
And Disney was definitely targeted directly.
And he was. And he had seen what was going on in the 30s with other companies. And before this, like, he didn't have any money, so he's not a target at the time. Whoa, Snow White comes in, Baller shows up, and he's got lifestyle. And so he becomes that target post Snow White. And, you know, there's rumors also going around with the guys in LA of them extorting Chicago mobsters of Al Capone are like, oh, we want in on this. And so they get this guy called the Enforcer, and he basically like scares the Skittles out of this guy and going, you're going to give me a cut of that. So now you have the mob getting involved in LA's like extorting of these movie companies into giving them money so that they don't shut them down with strikes. And so one of these guys starts like, okay, we're gonna form this guild and get the unions going. And Walt sees this, and Walt saw what the unions did to his father, and his father was not a successful man, and he saw his father struggle and with his family moving around place to place, and so it was really hard. He did not want to fall in the same trap as his father. He did not believe in how the unions, you know, said one thing and they didn't follow through necessarily on the worker. And so he thought, Father Walt got the family mentality. I'm going to try and protect this. I'm going to protect my company. I don't want to be extorted by these crooks, you know, these people. But there's a lot going on. So with all that money coming in, you know, you get these union people, the agitators come in and going, whoa, I'm starting to see a little inconsistency here. And they start throwing out these things. So at this new studio, the most valued animators made more money. That makes sense. But they also got a special office. And some are like, it was carpeted. They had a sauna. They had a gym where they had a Swiss Olympian there to help you train. You know, so you have these animators that are high value. They're making $300 a week. That's a lot of money
during that time period.
During that time period. But you're like an NBA player. You have a special skill and you produce great product and there's demand for you. And you get all these new people. So you go from like the 80 people that Walt has, Snow White, and then you boom to 1,200 people. There's a growth. And so with that, you have all these new people coming in, the people painting and all these little... And so you have these high value people making this much, and then you have the low value people making between $12 to $18 a week. And so when you can't afford to go to the cafeteria and you're like, I'm struggling here, I just want to eat, or, you know, eat at the cafeteria, or I just want a better lifestyle, as opposed to I can't go in here, I can't go in the carpeted building or go to the special sauna because I'm this person. And as you said back in the day with Walt, they're, you know, like, oh, everyone's moving around. And it's like, I think the new studio created something different. There was like, hey, we were in the trenches, old school, we made it. And like Walt rewarded those people. And you have the new guys that come in and they're like, wait a second.
Why can't I get what he
Why
has?
can't I get the sauna? And they're like, whoa, you got to pay your dues, you know.
You got to put your time in.
And so there was kind of this, like, this isn't fair. You're talking about families. And, like, as we know as a family, we have that picture in the hallway. And we're like, how many times there's Peter in that picture? How many times Jack? There's that equal feeling there. And so the union agitators really play upon that to really work for that, work for them. And so at this point, you know, Disney's like, there's no problem with the pay structure. He believed it was his studio, and it was, to run it as he saw it with his employees, and they should be grateful for what he's providing with this new studio space. I mean, he has sacrificed, he's put into it more, and he's giving them jobs in this depression.
And the thing is, like if you talk about like that studio, just that new studio that they built in Burbank, like he specifically designed the layout of all the buildings so that it would work perfectly in terms of being efficient. You know, he made sure certain buildings were angled certain ways so that the sunlight would hit certain windows and not other windows for other departments. So like Walt put in a lot of effort to make sure like his studio was built correctly and efficiently.
And so he thought he was doing them a service. Like, let's get them out of the Hyperion Order. This is an old building, and like, let's just, I'm bringing you into this new world. And a lot of people who are new to this didn't see that vision. I guess the salesman just didn't sell it. And so it's 1941, it's February, and Disney feels the pressure. He can hear the clamoring, and there's you know, he's got insight for what's going on through the grapevine. And so Disney gathers all 1,200 employees. So he's like, okay, this is important. I need to get everybody here. So he starts off, he goes, and this is from Walt, he goes, in the 20 years I've spent in this business, I've weathered many storms. It's been far from easy sailing. It required a great deal of work, struggle, and determination, confidence, faith, and above all, unselfishness. Some people think we have a class distinction in this place. They wonder why some people get better seats in the theater than others. They wonder why some men get spaces in the parking lot and others don't. I have always felt and always will feel that the men that contribute most to the organization should, out of respect alone, enjoy some privileges. My recommendation to the lot of you is this: put your own house in order. You can't accomplish for our younger audience, darn thing by sitting around and waiting to be told everything. If you're not progressing as you should, instead of grumbling and growling, do something about it. And so, like, that's heavy. That just lays out like...
It's not a quote that a lot of people throw out that Walt Disney would say, but he was, you know, he could be stern, for sure.
He came at it.
He had to be, though.
It's his view. Like, and I think he lays it out. It's like, we've sacrificed, we're here, we did this, you know, we created this world. You want a world, you create it. But this is mine, you want to play in mine, this is how we roll.
Yep.
And he laid it out, and for those who are like, they didn't agree with it. There were some people that just didn't agree with it, and at that moment, it was poorly received, and a lot of them joined that guild. And so with that being said, there's kind of a showdown. And Peter mentioned one of the animators, which was Art Babbitt, which he was in charge of the Evil Queen.
Yes.
And he was one of the creators of Goofy.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this guy's close. And to Walt, he's one of the OGs. He's getting his pay. He gets the special sauna. He gets the carpet in between his toes in the office, not the linoleum. He started growing sympathetic, and he started working with Walt in 1932, and he was one of the highest paid, animators that actually joined the union. Babbitt worked with Gunther Lessing, who was Disney's lawyer, and, working with organizations, workers' organizations like the Federation that would communicate with Walt, but they weren't a union. And then there was the union, and so Art was working with them with this issue. And Art had this one thing to say, or a few things to say. He goes, as swell as Walt has been in the past, he has never taken the trouble to see the other side. So I think he's getting at the point of, like, maybe he, it's hard to see to have that empathy. Because Walt is like, he is 15 steps ahead. And he's like, you're on my ship or you're off. That's how he is. And he kind of lays that out in his speech in the auditorium. And Babbitt told his colleagues he was firmly convinced that all unions are stevedores, I don't even know what that word is, and gangsters. And like history comes out, there were gangsters involved. It has never occurred to him that he might find a decent person to deal with. If Walt had taken the trouble to find out what he was doing and why we were doing it, the contract would have been signed long ago. So there's the feeling like he has this generalized theme of what the union is based on, past prejudice, and it brings them to this point where, like, hey, if you just listen to what we have to say as painters here, where I'm like, I'm making this amount of money, it might have been different. Like, you know, just to put in context, the police officer back then could live off of $5,000 a year. These animators that were only making $12 to like $18 a week were only living off of $1,000, less than $1,000 a year. And so it's like, you know, I think that's what Art was trying to go like, hey, if you could just work with us and we're not all bad, just hear what we have to say. But again, Walt has all this pressure of like, I'm moving my company forward. I'm getting crushed by Europe. No one's going to my movies. He has to like he's got to do stock options. He's got to make his company go public. So that means he's losing, you know, say in his company. You know, there was financial pressure, and he knows once the union gets in there, it's going to crush him. He's got to pay more, and he sees it, and he was like, I can't do this. And so that's why I think he digs his heels in.
His studio wasn't the only one that was being targeted. You know, like a lot of studios went out of business because of the unions. Mm-hmm. Like when they came in, it bankrupted a lot of them. And that's, I think Walt Disney saw the writing on the walls that if I let this in, we're gonna be in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, just like I said, those two movies just didn't do as well as he wanted, and they're not all his fault. They're not, and it's not his fault for Europe, and it's not his fault for the union agitator. It's just this perfect storm goes, and that's what's just so interesting for me. And you know, everything builds up to this point. I got to the point where the tension between Babbitt and Walt got so bad because Walt accused him for what did he say? He goes, if you don't stop organizing my employees, I'm going to throw you right the heck out of the front gate. And then shortly after, Walt fires Art. And as a result, 200 members of the staff went on strike on May 29th. And because Art was the organizer of, and it wasn't like he was like, I'm out for blood. He came at it at an approach going like, hey, these guys, I think they have a voice that needs to be heard, and maybe I can be the bridge. And it really strained it killed the relationship between Walt and Art. Walt had that family mentality, and for him, it was a betrayal to him, really, to have it.
He took it personal.
He did. It was bad. And so this strike goes on, and it's picketed for 24 hours. And boy, to see the picket signs that they came up of, don't piss off artists. They got some good ones there.
They were definitely, they did a good job.
They were the best picket signs I've seen, and they were good. And so as a support, other unions came in on this strike as well. Developers at Technicolor refused to process Disney's films. Newspapers withheld Disney comic strips. RKO, which was the distributor of Disney Films, announced it would stall Disney's releases until the strike was settled. So I mean, it brought the company to a stop, and he's got Dumbo going right now.
Cancel culture almost.
It's like, hey, we're united. We're gonna fight with our weapons, and you're gonna fight with yours. And it put so much pressure, and that's where I want to see is like, how is Walt doing this? Like, he's trying to do Dumbo. He's got other things he's going. I just want to see this man handle this pressure because this is a make or break for the company.
It was.
What he does in this moment really does. And I would say, and as I go on through the story, I don't know if he does the right thing, but his company's still here. And it's just an interesting piece that has not gone over because it may not depict Walt in a good light, but I think this really shows that he is a human. And
he's not a perfect person as much as I might make him sound like he is.
I'm not giving you the goosebumps that Peter gives you. Like mine are like all the goosebumps are like inverted in. They're like not coming out. And so with that said, the strike has hit its third week, and picketers had planned to bombard the non-striking colleagues, the scabs at the front gate as they're quitting on a Friday. On June 13th, 1941, but Walt has a plan up his sleeve. He goes, all right, before the confrontation, he got all his loyalists, and they went to an off-site, auditorium where they had a meeting, and they got released early. And by the time the strikers found out for it, they ran over. They tried to go over there and bombard them. Hey, join the strike! Walt! And Walt's sitting there in his car, and he, thinks he's pulled a fast one. He didn't think he did pull a fast one on him. And, you know, as Art came up to him, because by the time 400 picketers put their signs up, they raced to the school. Walt was the only one there with a couple people there. And, you know, he was sitting in the car and he tips his hat to them like, aha, gotcha. It was well played. You got to get
I would love to see a movie and like see that scene.
Just him just like, what's up, suckers?
It would definitely be an interesting movie to see. Obviously, Disney will never make that movie. But to see someone make a movie, a fair representation of what actually happened during that,
Yeah.
like, that would be a very interesting and compelling movie because, boy, is there drama.
There is drama. And at this point, Art goes up to him and he shouts to him, like, Walt Disney, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. To have your friend from, like, back in the day, from the early 30s, just to have him go, like, you should be ashamed of yourself. As if he had, like, a moral high ground on him to tell him he was wrong. And, you know, at that point, Disney scrambles from his vehicle with his fist clenched, calling Babbitt a dirty son of a... Well, we'll move on from there. The crowd came between them, half booing, half cheering. It's just like, whoa, that's not our world of like colored Walt, you know, like punching. So you know,
Walt was a very passionate.
He
man.
was, and this really brought this out of him right there.
Absolutely, it did.
Yeah, I read that, I was like, whoa, forget World War II. I want to see the throwdown in the parking lot between Art and Walt, you know, like. So the strike goes on, you know, Walt is in turmoil, and it goes, you know, Walt ends up, you know, getting a call from the U.S. government like, hey, we need you to go to South America. There's a great documentary about it called
Walt and El Grupo.
El Grupo.
Yes.
I was watching part of it today. It's great. I remember watching it 3 or 4 years ago. It tells of like an unwinding of Walt and him doing good work and opening up America, the United States to South America in a time where lines are being drawn, and so Walt is called on a paid vacation in a way by the U.S. government,
yeah.
and he takes it, and it's necessary for him because at this point he leaves. Roy takes over. You have a more logical
Roy.
person taking over, doing the business side, and
Roy was the numbers guy. He knew.
Yes.
And it was necessary. This was a numbers game. This was no longer a principle, and it had gone beyond, you know, this. It needed to be logic, not emotion driving this. Because the strike lasted 9 weeks, ending from falling pressures from the federal mediators, the national boycotts, the Bank of America, which has his loans, and whoever has your debts, they're invested because they want to make sure they get their monies.
Yep.
And you know, Roy himself going, you need to end this, you know, and so with that being done, it ends. It results in salary increases, 40-hour weeks, and screen credits for the animators. You know, so I mean, those are reasonable things. I mean, there are other things that were, you know, things were taken advantage of. I don't know all the details. I didn't read the contract. Again, this is a hobby for us. And so at this point, Disney never forgets those who participate in this union, and he has contempt, and he basically blackballs them in the company.
He definitely has a different perspective on his workers after this point. Like, you can definitely tell his tone changes when he's interacting with a lot of the people that he associates with, and so he only has a select few people that like he really trusts, and he opens up to them, and those people were always free and willing to tell Walt whatever.
They weren't going to get fired.
They were correct, and the 9 old men were an example of that. Like, those were
the core,
and they're obviously, when the Disney parks came in, there were more people that came in there that became part of the core but weren't animators.
Yeah. As he expands, he has different people for different needs.
He definitely distanced himself from his workers at this point. So at this point, it was no longer a family thing. It was definitely a business.
And I think that's important because, like you said, he valued loyalty above all, but he withdrew from the family unit, like you said. And it's because you go from 80, and I think you can manage 80, but once you get to 1,200 people and you're running back-to-back like animation, you can't handle that. It's too much. You know, you were the master of this, but that doesn't approach. And I think that was necessary for his growth into the larger company, to where it's like you're more of a manager.
Yep.
If you want to do what you want, you can't be the guy that's telling the story for everything and salespeople. You got to get the right person. And so he becomes the guy that moves people around, going, "I think you can do this.
Yeah.
You can do this. Do this for me." And that's what he's excelled at doing post this. And I think that was huge for him. Even so much the strike affected him, where he went during the communist witch hunts. He went to an Un-American Activities Committee, and he alleged that communists had played a major role in the strike. I mean, he was throwing people under the bus because he was hurt by what had happened, and he'd been emotionally hurt and financially hurt by this, and he thought it was the most un-American thing, and he went again. He went. I mean, this is 1952. It's been 10 years, and he's still throwing people, going, this guy, this is serious.
You gotta imagine, Walt had, again, he stated earlier, back when the strike was started, he said, I've been through this for the last 20 years. And it wasn't an easy 20 years.
No.
It was hard. And so when Snow White hit, he finally had success. And he was finally like, yes, now I can really get to work on what I want to do. And then this happens, and it just his dreams were crumbling before his eyes. And he was just like, no.
Yeah, it was so hard. And so with this period, that human side, everyone thinks Snow White, and it's rocket ships to the moon.
Nope.
And boy, was it
40s was a rough decade.
It was. And that's why you kind of forget about it. And so after the war ends, he has this saying, Castor Walt goes, we're going from caviar, which was the success of Snow White, to hey, we're meat and gravy to get this thing going.
Yep.
So he kind of gets back. And I think this period kind of grounds him, whether he needed it or not. I don't know. It's not for me to say, but it does ground him, and doesn't stop his vision for expanding and growth, but it certainly changes how he approaches things with his company. Diana Disney Miller said the death of his mother, the sudden death of his mother, and the strike was the hardest problem for him to deal with, because there were things he could not control, or he could get something positive out of it. He just saw that they hurt me, and I can't grow from it. He had problems elsewhere, but he could spin it to I needed this, and she felt that those two events that her father said were ones that hurt her. I think it's a great time period just to learn from and not to forget about. For Walt learned something. It was just a transitional period for the company to go through. So with that, I'm traveling back. Here we are, Jackie. Here are the keys. Your turn.
Woo! Alright, I got the keys. Going back in time to July 17th, 1955.
Woo! Happy time!
Happy time!
Come on, goosebumps. Let's come out.
Let's put some positives out there now.
We went high, we went low. Let's go high, Jackie.
You would think about that, but Disneyland opened. It was probably one of the darkest, and hardest days.
Oh, okay. Let's go back down. Let's bring it down.
You're talking about Black Sunday.
It is called Black Sunday.
Tell me what's Black Sunday.
So it was July 17th, 1955.
It's a Sunday.
Was a Sunday. It was a day that they were going to open the Disneyland park.
It was media day.
For press.
Okay. Soft opening.
Yeah, it was a soft opening.
Because like everyone always says, July 17th is the opening of Disneyland, but technically it wasn't open till the 18th.
Till the 18th.
Oh.
So they were...
And sorry, random fact about the 18th.
Peter's going to interrupt the log here.
That's alright, I know a lot. George Lucas was there on the 18th of July.
Whoa!
Oh, that's cool.
So he's
there. Pointing up, he's I'm going to put Star Tours here.
So,
and then Galaxy Edge is going to be here. I'm not going to have any say because I'm going to have $1 billion.
Yeah, so July 17th, they were planning on just doing a press day. They only mailed about 6,000 or 8,000 invites to press. And this got out, and on the day of opening, there was over 28,000 people that showed up.
Only 4 times more. We're gonna need more corn dogs.
There was about like 11,000 or so counterfeit tickets.
Oh.
And on the side, I love this, there was even locals, who had ladders and would charge
Jump the fence.
$5 to jump the fence.
Oh man, these people are smart.
Yes.
I would say like that's pretty smart. $5 get you in the back.
Which is like crazy, like to think. Now Walt Disney at this time, he was just dealing with media. He had a strict schedule, so
he wasn't doing perimeter checks. Hey, where's your ticket?
He had no idea what was going on. So I would love to see the faces of chaos of the cast members and the park managers going where did all these come from? What are these counterfeit tickets? And just the pure panic.
It would be interesting. Yes, I could definitely see the chaos.
Yeah.
I agree. This was definitely on my list of choices of where I would wanted to go and see the chaos.
And like I said before, all 3 of us can't go back to this day. But Correct. It would be a day where a lot of people would just want to see just this one point in history.
Right. And so at that time, only 20 attractions were open, 5 lands. It was 100 degrees,
Ooh.
Which was a record high.
Oof.
People weren't wearing shorts and a t-shirt. They
There's
were
a dress
wearing
code.
Suits, dresses, heels. This was not a summer where,
Disneyland didn't transition to that t-shirt and shorts for at least
the 70s, right?
It was about 70s when it
transitioned. The
hippie
pushed when the hippies pushed back.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
When they took over Tom Sawyer's Island. We'll talk about that another day.
So, it was hot, way overcrowded than what they were planning for, because of that.
It's starting to sound like a D23 convention.
Yes. It definitely does. There was... food ran out.
Yep.
And drinks, because... no fountains were working because of a plumber strike, and
dang unions.
Walt had a choice between
working restrooms and drinking fountains. And Walt says, "You can't pee in the streets
unless you're in Liberty Square or Disney World. Then you have a poop stream." He had a lot of foresight there, and eventually Liberty Square.
There were people still planting trees and gardening while the park opened. The asphalt was soft.
So it was still settling.
It
still
was
trying
still
to cure.
settling. And I can understand. I was like, well, why didn't they plan this in advance? I was like, well, if you're only expecting 6,000 people, they're like, oh, this will be fine. But, 28,000 people and...
You can't plan for that.
You can't plan for
4
that.
times the amount.
It doesn't matter how much preparation you put into there. There's no way you are prepared for that many people.
Even in planning for a combat war, you plan 3 times the amount of your enemy. So, not saying that the guests were enemies, but 4 times the amount showed up, and so they weren't prepared for it. So that still blows my mind, that number.
Yeah. Food and drink ran out. There was a gas leak in Fantasyland, which caused Adventureland and Frontierland to close part of the afternoon.
Which, if you remember our trivia episode, it wasn't open that long.
No. It was afternoon, right? Or what time did it open? It was 10 or 11?
No, it opened at
12?
12 or 1.
Okay.
It opened and it closed at 7, I think.
Yes.
So.
And like I had said before, I love this. The riverboat sank.
Yeah, I had heard that.
Yeah. Because there's too many people on it.
They things to see. That would be exciting to see the Mark Twain. Like, bloop, 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 bloop,
Slowly, it's taken to the sea.
So it's just like so much chaos. But even when I was watching like the opening day, you can watch it on YouTube, of ABC's like opening day.
See
at
Ronald Reagan.
Disneyland.
Our president.
Yeah, you can see.
Who's the president? Ronald Reagan?
Who's his vice president? Jerry Lewis?
So you could see the media, and you could see like it looked okay, but there were some awkward moments.
Oh yeah.
Wasn't there like a reporter kissing somebody on
Yeah.
live TV?
Oh yeah. There was a reporter that was making out with the lady.
There was, because it was so crowded, people were tripping on wires, so they were having technical difficulties. There was,
Watch your step. Watch your step. Watch your step.
it was very like rushed, and they were jumping one place to another, and my favorite moment in the special is at the end when Walt's all like waving to goodbye.
Oh,
And then
yes.
they turn walking to the castle,
This awkward
and
thing, yeah.
Walt like puts his arm around the other guy, and it's just hanging there.
They like have this like arm link, and it's like really awkward looking, and then they like separate.
Is it like Weekend at Bernie's with Walt?
It's just like this weird, like
Yeah, they like intertwine their arms, and it's just so
Like-
awkward.
like one. It looks like one person's trying to do like a side hug, and the other one's trying to link arms, and so it's like this like it's pretty hilarious.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh.
Oh man, I would love to see that in person, and like the reaction once the cameras turn off.
It's like, that was stupid.
Yeah, I would have loved to see that. And then some of the things, like positive things I would love to see is like Davy Crockett like coming in on
Best
the
Parker.
horse, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Golden Horseshoe like shows. There was like pretty like traditional type of shows.
Watch I would recommend anyone watch some of the original Golden Horseshoe review shows that were there. Like that show lasted decades.
I had fond memories of going to those shows in my childhood.
And like for the most part, most of the jokes were all the same. It's the same show, and it was great. They tried to bring it back, but they saw issues with it, and they're like, "We can't do this anymore."
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that interacting with the guest and
It was
the jokes.
the whole the lady who was flirting with the guys in the audience. Yeah, that was a big.
I could see that.
Yeah.
One thing I wish I could go back and see, or on this day, was like the pirate ship in Fantasyland that doesn't exist anymore.
The Chicken of the Sea restaurant.
Yeah, the Chicken of the Sea restaurant.
Is it real chicken? That was just like a joke from way back in the day.
That's like a 2000s joke.
I'm old, okay?
Who was that? That was
Jessica Simpson.
Jessica Simpson.
Nick Lachey and
Yeah.
Newlywed.
Their reality TV show.
Is Chicken of the Sea real chicken or is it fish? Like I think is it chicken? Sorry, we're back in 1955.
And
Sorry.
then one of the big reasons why I want to go back to opening day is there's like the scene that they created. I'm sure they like created it, but like it was a group of kids or mob of kids almost running through the castle into Fantasyland.
Oh yeah,
That would
And
be crazy.
I would just love to see that, just because like as a kid you're like in.
It's a kid
I mean-
running to a playground.
Yes,
you know?
exactly, and
to be the
Just-
first.
just to see like that pure joy. Oh,
And then you have a cast member go like, "Walk, please," and like totally kills the vibe because that's what we do best.
I mean, you gotta imagine how much excitement these kids have been going through because Walt had his TV show. He was,
Building it
He was
up.
the best
building-
hype man.
He was. Walt was a great hype man for Disneyland. So that excitement was real for those kids. Like they wanted nothing more than to go through those castle and ride those rides.
Yeah, so Walt didn't even know anything about these problems until the next day. After media.
It's like, don't tell Walt.
Yeah, it was probably one of those days. What do we do? Don't tell Walt.
And then the newspapers came out.
Yeah, and it seemed like it was a failure, and so it opened on the 18th.
Again, news media. Black Sunday.
Yeah.
Failure.
They're always trying to spin a story, but in this instance, like, it was a rough day.
It was a rough day. Absolutely.
They did have a second media day. That was a private event, no outsiders. It was purely for media to kind of...
They cracked down on those, like, ladders on the fence.
Yeah. So, it was a hard day to open up, but it would have been great if I could, like, talk to any of the cast members, be like, it'll be okay. You'll see.
This is going to be great.
Yeah.
You guys are the foundation.
You're going to create something that you guys have no idea.
And yeah, to inspire generations and to be that warm and fuzzy. Ooh, goosebumps! They're back again.
They're back again.
We brought them back. All right.
You're going to inspire people to have podcasts about Disney.
I know.
Subscribe.
But it's great because, Disneyland has currently been closed.
The longest. It's never closed for this long.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Over a year now.
Over a year now. And it's going to be opening up fairly soon.
April 30th.
April 30th. And what a great moment to kind of reflect back on the opening day of Disneyland when the park is going to open up again. And I really hope, it's a high hope, but I really hope they have the drawbridge.
No, they're not doing that.
That'd be so cool, though. Same thing that they would do on the opening day.
I think that they only did that once.
Yeah, for an anniversary.
No, they did it for when they reopened Fantasyland after they remodeled
That's
it.
right.
They did it then. I don't think
it's functional anymore.
I don't think it's functional anymore. I think
that takes a lot of work.
I think with a recent refurb on the castle, they made it so that it's not operable anymore.
Legally, I think it's probably stationary. But yes, and thought
it would be cool. Absolutely.
Metaphorically, it'd be bringing it down and crumbling across for the first time.
But now, instead of running children into Fantasyland, it will be parents with strollers.
No, it's gonna be vloggers with their cameras
with the
out.
Cameras out, yes.
Don't be that person, please. Just enjoy the moment.
Yeah.
Put down the camera.
We won't be there on opening day, but we'll be there in spirit.
I'm sure there'll be hundreds of people with cameras, and you can
live
experience
feed.
it then. Yep.
Which is good. It's always fun to watch those.
So that's where I would go back in time.
That's exciting.
That's a good one. That's a good time to see.
Exciting to see beginnings of different variety, both of the Disney company as a whole, to see where the foundation of what the company would later become, to see the
turmoil,
the growing pains that the company went through, and then to see the additional growing pains with the park opening. I loved this. I hope you guys enjoyed doing this. There were so many times that I would like to go back and see, because I am a big Disney nerd. Like, I want to go see the World's Fair, 1964 World's Fair. I want to see the time period after Walt passed away. Like, there's so, like, I want to come back to this. We'll see, but this was very fun. I enjoyed this a lot. I think we can learn a lot by looking at the past and being able to move forward as a people. So thank you for joining us this week. You can join us on our social medias.
Instagram and Facebook page. Please follow us, Matterhorn Yodelers, and then you can email us at matterhornyodelers@gmail.com.
Yes, and send us a message. Like, what time period in the Disney company would you like to see? Is there, would you like to see the opening of what Indiana Jones was like on the first day. Or, you know, what, it can be anything, you know, doesn't have to be as
The
grand.
making of the Little Mermaid, you know, like
That would be an incredible time. Or Treasure Planet, you know, whatever floats your boat, you know.
Home on the Range.
Home on the Range, you know. There's a fan base there
I'd
for that,
love to
I
watch
guess.
Roseanne and that sound booth just moving away.
So, yeah, just let us know. What would you like to travel back in your time machine and go and see? And until next time, auf Wiedersehen.